Captain Hyunwoo stared at the blue marble that was Earth through the observation deck of Luna Station. The coffee in his hands had gone cold hours ago, but he barely noticed. Today would change everything for humanity, though he did not know it yet. The warning alarm started softly, then grew louder. Hyunwoo set down his cup and rushed to the command center. His crew was already at their stations, faces tense with worry. On the main screen, something impossible appeared. A ship unlike anything humans had ever built was approaching the station. "Sir, we're getting a transmission," said Lieutenant Park, his voice shaking slightly. "It's not in any Earth language, but somehow we can understand it." The ship was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. It looked like it was made of living crystal, with surfaces that shifted between colors like oil on water. Lights pulsed along its hull in patterns that seemed almost like breathing. "This is Ambassador Velthara of the Galactic Federation," came a voice that sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "We request permission to dock. We bring urgent news for the people of Earth." Hyunwoo had trained for many scenarios, but not this one. He took a deep breath and activated the communication system. "This is Captain Hyunwoo of Luna Station. Permission granted. Welcome to human space." Within an hour, the alien ship had docked with the station. Hyunwoo waited in the main airlock with a small team, including Dr. So-young, Earth's best scientist who studied life from other worlds. They had called her up from Earth as fast as possible. When the airlock opened, Hyunwoo tried not to show his surprise. Ambassador Velthara was tall and thin, almost like a human but clearly different. Her skin was pale and seemed to glow from within. Her eyes were larger than human eyes and completely silver. She wore robes that moved like they were underwater even though there was no wind. "Captain Hyunwoo," Velthara said, her voice creating harmonies that human voices could not make. "I am honored to meet you. I wish our first meeting could be under better circumstances." Dr. So-young stepped forward, trying to hide her excitement. "Ambassador, this is amazing. We have so many questions." Velthara smiled, an expression that looked both familiar and strange on her alien face. "And I hope we will have time to answer them all. But first we must speak of urgent matters. Your species is in great danger, as is the entire galaxy." They moved to the station's main conference room. Velthara touched a small device on her wrist, and the air above the table filled with images. Stars and planets appeared, rotating slowly in the space between them. "This is the galaxy as we know it," Velthara explained. 12 different species have joined together in what we call the Galactic Federation. For over 300 of your years, we have been at war. The images changed, showing dark shapes moving between the stars. Where they passed, the lights of stars and planets went out, leaving only empty black space. "We call them the Void Swarm," Velthara continued. "They consume everything. Planets, stars, entire solar systems. They leave nothing behind but emptiness. They have destroyed hundreds of worlds and killed billions of beings." Hyunwoo felt his stomach drop. "How many are there?" "We do not know. They seem endless. Every time we destroy one of their fleets, 2 more appear. They learn from each battle and become stronger. We are losing this war." Dr. So-young studied the images carefully. "What do they want? Resources? Territory? We believe they want to consume everything that exists," Velthara said quietly. "They do not communicate. They do not negotiate. They simply arrive and begin destroying." The ambassador showed them more images. Alien cities under attack, strange creatures fighting against dark, shapeless enemies, ships that looked like works of art being torn apart by things that seemed to be made of living shadow. "The Federation races each have special abilities," Velthara explained. "The Veltharians, like myself, can create energy shields and manipulate light. The Krillins are insects who fight in perfect coordination. The Neptans live in water and can control liquids. Each species brings unique gifts to the war." Hyunwoo looked at the images of the other alien races. They all seemed powerful and advanced. "What about humans? What special abilities do we have?" Velthara was quiet for a moment. "That is what we hope to discover. Your species is young, but you have achieved space travel remarkably quickly. Perhaps you have gifts that we do not yet understand." Dr. So-young frowned as she studied the battle footage. "Your weapons all seem to use energy. Lasers, plasma, force fields. And your tactics appear very organized, formal." "Of course," Velthara said, sounding surprised. "How else would civilized beings fight?" "And the Void Swarm? How do they fight?" "With overwhelming numbers and brutal force. They show no honor, no mercy. They attack from all directions at once. Hyunwoo thought about human history, about all the wars his species had fought. Ambassador, with respect, it sounds like you're fighting with rules that your enemy doesn't follow. Velthara looked confused. But without rules, without honor codes, how can any being call themselves civilized? Dr. So Young and Hyunwoo exchanged glances. Humans had asked themselves that question many times throughout their history. Sometimes the answer was unpleasant. We would like to help, Hyunwoo said finally, but we should be honest. Humans don't have energy powers or special abilities like your Federation races. We're probably the most primitive species you've encountered. Perhaps, Velthara agreed, but you are also the only new species we have found in over 50 years. We are desperate, Captain. The Federation Council was not enthusiastic about contacting such a young race, but we have few options left. She showed them one final image, a star map with red areas spreading like infection across the galaxy. This shows Void Swarm territory from 50 years ago, and this shows it today. At this rate, they will reach the core worlds of the Federation within 20 years. Including Earth. The room fell silent. Hyunwoo looked at the spreading darkness on the map and felt something cold settle in his chest. What do you need from us? Whatever you can offer. Ships, weapons, warriors. Any help could make a difference. We'll need to contact Earth immediately, Hyunwoo said. Our leaders will want to know everything. Velthara nodded. Of course. But Captain, there is something else you should know. The Federation Council is skeptical about human capabilities. They believe humans would be best suited for support roles. Mining, transportation, perhaps defense of less important worlds. Dr. So Young raised an eyebrow. They think we're not good enough for real fighting? Many believe that without natural powers or advanced technology, humans would only be a liability in major battles. Hyunwoo felt something stir inside him, something that he recognized from human history books. It was the feeling that came when someone said something couldn't be done, when the odds were impossible, when everyone expected you to fail. Tell the Federation Council that humanity accepts their offer, he said quietly. We'll take whatever assignment they give us. And Ambassador? Yes, Captain? I think they might be surprised by what humans can do when everyone expects them to lose. Velthara tilted her head, studying the human captain's expression. There was something in his eyes that she had never seen in any Federation species before. Something that looked almost like eagerness for the impossible fight ahead. I will relay your message, she said. Prepare your people, Captain. The war begins now. Colonel Ji-hoon stood on the landing platform of Kepler 442b and watched his soldiers unload their equipment. The planet was hot and dusty, with a red sun that made everything look like it was covered in rust. It was not the kind of place humans would choose to live. But the Neptans seemed to like it well enough. Sir, the Neptune colony administrator wants to meet with you, said Major Yu-jin, walking up with a tablet in her hands. She had been studying the Federation military files during the entire trip from Earth, trying to understand how aliens fought wars. Ji-hoon nodded and followed her toward the main colony building. The structure was strange to human eyes, with walls that curved like ocean waves and doorways that were wider than they were tall. Everything was built for beings who moved differently than humans. The colony administrator was waiting for them in a room filled with water that came up to their waists. The Neptan looked like a cross between a human and a dolphin, with smooth blue-gray skin and large black eyes. When he spoke, his voice gurgled like he was talking underwater. I am Administrator Nekwil, the alien said. I must be honest, Colonel. We requested Federation military support, not this, Ji-hoon asked. Primitive species with no special abilities. The Federation Council assured us that humans would be adequate for basic defense, but we had hoped for Krillin warriors or Veltharian shield masters. Major Yu-jin stepped forward. With respect, Administrator, we're here to help whether you want us or not. The Federation assigned us to protect this colony, and that's what we'll do. Nekwil's large eyes blinked slowly. No offense intended. But what can humans possibly do against the Void Swarm? You have no energy weapons, no psychic powers, no natural armor. You are, forgive me, very soft and fragile. Ji-hoon smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. We'll see about that. Show us your defenses. The colony's defense system was impressive but predictable. Energy barriers surrounded the mining facilities, with weapons platforms at regular intervals. Everything was positioned to create overlapping fields of fire from fixed positions. It was the kind of defense that would work well against an enemy who attacked in an organized, civilized manner. Sergeant Tejo studied the defensive layout with the eyes of someone who had fought in many different kinds of wars. Sir, this is designed for fighting Federation-style opponents. Formal attacks, clear battle lines, honorable combat. And the Void Swarm doesn't fight that way? Yujin asked. According to the files, they just swarm forward in huge numbers from all directions at once, Tejo replied. These fixed positions will be surrounded and overwhelmed in minutes. Ji-hoon gathered his officers that evening in their temporary command post. The building was simple human construction, which looked crude next to the flowing Neptune architecture but served their purposes better. The aliens think we're primitives, he told his team. They've given us the job they think is least important because they expect us to fail. Dr. Haiwan, what's your assessment of Neptune physiology? The combat medic looked up from her medical scanner readings. They're adapted for aquatic environments, Colonel. Very good in water, but they tire quickly on land. Their bones are more flexible than ours, which makes them harder to break, but also means they can't take heavy impacts as well as humans can. Combat capabilities? Asked Yujin. They use energy weapons that work well underwater, but they're not very mobile. They fight from prepared positions and rely on their technology more than physical ability. Tejo spread out a map of the colony on the table. Sir, I've been thinking about this wrong. We keep trying to understand how to fight like Federation species. But what if that's exactly the problem? Explain, Ji-hoon said. The Void Swarm has been beating Federation forces for 300 years. They know how Federation species fight. Energy weapons, formal tactics, fixed positions, honor codes. But they've never fought humans before. Yujin nodded slowly. You're saying we should fight like humans, not like aliens? Exactly. Guerrilla warfare, mobile tactics, improvised weapons. Everything the Federation considers uncivilized. Ji-hoon looked at the map and thought about the wars of human history. It might work, but we'll have to completely ignore Federation military doctrine. Good, said Tejo with a grin. I never liked following other people's rules anyway. The attack came 3 weeks later, just before dawn. The colony's sensors detected the Void Swarm ships while they were still hours away, giving everyone time to prepare. The Neptune defenders took their positions behind the energy barriers and powered up their weapons platforms. Ji-hoon's human forces did something different. They abandoned the prepared positions entirely. Sir, the human forces are leaving their assigned defensive points, reported the Neptune sensor operator to Administrator Nequil. Leaving? Where are they going? They appear to be scattering throughout the mining tunnels and surrounding hills. Nequil was confused. But that leaves gaps in our defensive perimeter. Do they not understand basic military strategy? When the Void Swarm arrived, they looked exactly like the descriptions in Federation files, but somehow worse in person. The creatures were dark and shapeless, constantly shifting between different forms. Some looked like living shadows, others like masses of writhing tentacles. They moved without sound and seemed to absorb light around them. The swarm attacked exactly as expected, swarming toward the colony from all directions at once. The Neptune energy weapons fired steadily, cutting down the front ranks of attackers. But more kept coming, flowing around the defensive positions like water. Then something happened that no one expected. Explosions erupted throughout the swarm formation, not from the colony defenses but from hidden positions in the surrounding terrain. Human soldiers appeared from concealed spots firing weapons that made sharp cracking sounds instead of the humming of energy beams. Tejo's voice came over the communication system. Target the big ones with the tentacles. They seemed to be giving orders to the smaller creatures. The human weapons were different from anything the Federation used. Instead of energy beams, they fired small metal projectiles at incredible speed. The bullets punched through Void Swarm creatures that could absorb energy attacks, dropping them instantly. Dr. Haiwan had set up a field medical station in one of the mining tunnels. When a young Neptune warrior named Aquilseth was brought to her with severe injuries, she did something that shocked the other Neptunes. Instead of the careful, gentle treatment they expected, she worked aggressively to stop the bleeding and stabilize his condition. What are you doing to him? Asked another Neptune medic in horror. Saving his life, Hwan replied, injecting stimulants directly into Aquilseth's bloodstream. Sometimes gentle doesn't work fast enough. The Neptune medic watched in amazement as Aquilseth's vital signs stabilized and his eyes opened.
How did you?
Our methods would have taken hours to achieve this result. Different species, different medicine, Hwan said simply. Sometimes you have to be willing to cause a little harm to prevent a lot of harm. The battle continued for hours, but it was unlike any fight the Federation had ever seen. Human soldiers moved constantly, appearing from unexpected positions to attack and then disappearing before the swarm could respond. They used the mining tunnels and natural caves to move unseen, striking at weak points in the swarm formation. Major Yujin coordinated the attacks from a mobile command post that changed location every 30 minutes. Alpha Team hit their left flank and then fall back to Tunnel 7. Bravo Team set up an ambush at the north mining entrance. The Void Swarm creatures were designed to fight enemies who stood still and traded energy fire. They had no experience with opponents who refused to stay in one place or fight fair. When they tried to surround human positions, they found empty tunnels. When they concentrated on one area, attacks came from completely different directions. The turning point came when Ji-hoon led a direct assault on the largest swarm creature, a massive thing that seemed to be coordinating the entire attack. Instead of engaging it at long range like Federation doctrine suggested, his team used explosives to collapse a mining tunnel directly underneath it. All units concentrated fire on the big one while it's down. Ji-hoon shouted. Every human weapon in range opened fire at once, pouring thousands of metal bullets into the creature. It writhed and screamed with a sound like tearing metal, then dissolved into black smoke. With their commander destroyed, the rest of the swarm creatures became confused and disorganized. Human forces pressed their advantage, attacking from multiple directions at once. Within an hour, the surviving swarm creatures were retreating toward their ships. But Ji-hoon wasn't finished. Yujin, can we hit their ships before they escape? The mining equipment includes heavy excavation charges. If we can get them to the landing site, do it. 20 minutes later, the Void Swarm ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light as human mining explosives detonated among them. None of the attackers escaped. Administrator Neckwill stared at the battlefield in disbelief. Where he had expected to find the ruins of his colony and the bodies of brave defenders, he found human soldiers sitting around small fires, drinking something called coffee and sharing stories about the battle. How? Was all he could manage to say. Colonel Ji-hoon looked up from his cup and smiled. We fought like humans. General Dae-hyun had never expected to stand before the Federation War Council, but there he was, surrounded by representatives from 12 different alien species. The chamber was enormous, built to accommodate beings of many different sizes and environmental needs. Some sat in pools of water, others floated in energy fields, and a few hung from the ceiling like enormous bats. The news of humanity's victory at the mining colony had spread through Federation space like wildfire. For the first time in 3 centuries, someone had not just survived a void swarm attack, but completely destroyed the attacking force. The council needed to understand how this was possible. General Dae-hyun, spoke the Veltharian High Sage, her crystalline voice echoing through the chamber. We have reviewed the battle reports from Kepler 442b. Frankly, we find them difficult to believe. With respect, High Sage, every detail has been verified by multiple witnesses, Dae-hyun replied. Both Neptune colonists and Federation sensors confirm the events. A large insect-like creature clicked its mandibles together in what Dae-hyun had learned was the Krillin equivalent of disbelief. Your tactics violate every principle of civilized warfare, abandoning defensive positions, using improvised weapons, attacking enemy commanders directly. This is not how wars are fought. Admiral Won-ho stepped forward, carrying a portable display device. Perhaps that's exactly the problem. May I show you something? The display activated, filling the air above the council chamber with images from human history. Battles from ancient times to the modern era played out in holographic detail. The alien representatives watched in fascination and growing horror as they saw humans fighting in ways they had never imagined. This is the Battle of Thermopylae, Won-ho explained as the images showed 300 Spartan warriors holding off a massive Persian army. 300 humans held a narrow pass against thousands of enemies by using terrain and tactics instead of superior numbers. More images followed. Roman legions using discipline and organization to conquer vast territories. Medieval knights charging into impossible odds. Guerrilla fighters in jungles and mountains using stealth and surprise to defeat larger forces. Naval battles where outnumbered fleets won through clever maneuvering and innovation. And this, Won-ho said as the final images appeared, is from our most recent global conflict, just over a century ago. Humans fought each other with weapons that could destroy entire cities. using strategies that required millions of soldiers and resources from entire continents. The council chamber fell silent. The scale of human warfare was beyond anything the Federation species had ever imagined. Their own conflicts had been limited affairs fought with honor codes and clear objectives. The idea of total war, where entire populations mobilized for conflict, was completely alien to them. Commander So-Jin had been invited to demonstrate human technological adaptation. She stood before a table covered with pieces of captured void swarm technology, things that Federation scientists had been studying for decades without success. The Federation approach to understanding alien technology is very thorough, she began diplomatically. Careful analysis, committee reviews, extensive testing procedures. Very safe and very slow. She picked up a piece of dark, writhing material that had once been part of a swarm creature. We took a different approach. Instead of trying to understand exactly how this works, we focused on making it work for us. So-Jin attached the alien material to a standard human rifle. The biotechnology seemed to merge with the weapon, creating something that looked both familiar and completely strange. She fired a test shot at a target, and instead of a simple bullet, a projectile of living darkness struck the target and began consuming it. "Impossible," whispered the Neptune representative. "Our scientists have been unable to make swarm biotechnology compatible with any Federation systems." "That's because you're trying to understand it first," So-Jin explained. "We just experimented until something worked. We've created over 50 different hybrid weapons in the past month." The Veltharian High Sage leaned forward in her crystalline chair. "This is incredibly dangerous. What if the biotechnology turns against you? What if it begins consuming your own forces?" So-Jin smiled. "Then we'll figure out how to stop it. That's what humans do. We try things, fail, learn from failure, and try again until we succeed." Dr. Minho had been asked to explain human psychology to the council. The alien representatives found human behavior confusing and often disturbing. They could not understand why humans seemed to enjoy conflict instead of viewing it as a necessary evil. Most Federation species evolved in environments where cooperation was essential for survival, Minho explained. Your societies developed honor codes and formal structures because they helped maintain peace and order. He activated his own display, showing images of Earth's diverse environments. Humans evolved in a world with many different climates and challenges. We had to learn to adapt quickly, to compete with other species, and sometimes to fight each other for resources. Conflict became part of our nature. But surely civilized beings can overcome their primitive instincts, said the Krillin war leader. We don't see it as primitive, Minho replied. We see it as useful. Our ability to be aggressive when necessary, to break rules when they don't work, to keep fighting when others would surrender. These traits have helped us survive and grow as a species. The turning point in the council session came when Lieutenant Wu Jin presented his proposal. The young officer had studied Federation intelligence, reports, and identified what he believed was a critical weakness in swarm strategy. The Void Swarm has been successful because they force you to fight defensively, Wu Jin explained. You wait for them to attack, then try to stop them. But what if we took the fight to them instead? Impossible, declared the Neptune representative. Swarm breeding worlds are heavily defended. Any attack would be suicide. For Federation forces, yes, Wu Jin agreed. Your ships and weapons are designed for direct confrontation, but humans have experience with what we call special operations. Small teams, stealth insertion, sabotage from within. He showed them his plan. Instead of attacking a swarm breeding world directly, a small human team would infiltrate the planet and corrupt the breeding process itself. Using modified swarm biotechnology, they could introduce genetic changes that would turn newly created swarm creatures against their own kind. This is biological warfare, the High Sage said with obvious distaste. Such methods are barbaric. Maybe, Wu Jin replied. But they work. And right now working is more important than being civilized. The debate continued for hours. The Federation representatives were torn between their need for human help and their distaste for human methods. Finally, the Krillin war leader spoke up. I have fought the Void Swarm for over 200 years, he said. I have watched entire star systems die because our civilized methods were not enough. If these humans can offer victory, then perhaps it is time to set aside our objections. The vote was close, but humanity was granted permission to attempt their infiltration mission. Wu Jin was given command of a team of human special forces soldiers and access to the most advanced Federation stealth technology available. 3 weeks later, Wu Jin's team successfully infiltrated the swarm breeding world of Terminus 7. Using a combination of human stealth techniques and captured swarm biotechnology, they introduced a genetic virus into the planet's breeding pools. The virus was designed to make new swarm creatures turn on their creators instead of following orders. The mission was a complete success. Within days, 3 entire swarm fleets had been destroyed by their own newly created forces. The bioweapon spread to other breeding worlds, causing chaos throughout swarm territory. When Wu Jin returned to Federation space, he found the council chamber in an uproar. Representatives who had been horrified by human methods just weeks before were now demanding to know how the technique could be expanded and improved. "General Dae-hyun," said the High Sage, "it appears we have underestimated human capabilities. The Council wishes to discuss a new arrangement." "What kind of arrangement?" Dae-hyun asked. "Full military partnership. Human commanders working alongside Federation forces. Human tactics integrated with Federation technology. We are prepared to learn from you, even if your methods make us uncomfortable." Dae-hyun looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives of 12 alien species. They were offering humanity something unprecedented, a chance to help shape the future of galactic civilization. "On one condition," he said. "We do this our way. No more assignments to backwater colonies or support roles. Humans fight on the front lines where the real war is happening." The High Sage was quiet for a long moment. "Agreed, but General, I must ask. Are you certain that humanity is ready for this responsibility? War changes those who fight it. We fear that humans may lose themselves in the conflict." Dae-hyun smiled. "High Sage, humans have been fighting wars since before we learned to make fire. We know exactly who we are. The question is whether the galaxy is ready for us." As the council session ended, and the various representatives began to file out, many of them cast uncertain glances at the human delegation. They had asked for help against an impossible enemy, and they had received it. But they were beginning to realize that humanity— Captain Boram stood on the bridge of the Federation battleship Stellar Harmony and tried not to show her frustration. The ship was beautiful, with flowing organic curves that seemed to pulse with inner light. The technology was incredible, far beyond anything humans had built. "But the crew was driving her crazy, Captain. The Krillin fighters are requesting permission to begin their attack run," reported her Veltarian communications officer, whose crystalline skin glowed softly in the bridge lighting. Boram looked at the tactical display. The Void Swarm fleet was still hours away from their current position. "Denied. Tell them to hold formation and wait for my signal." "But Captain," clicked the Krillin squadron leader over the communication system, "honor demands that we engage the enemy as soon as possible. Waiting shows fear. Waiting shows intelligence," Boram replied firmly. "We're going to let them come to us and hit them when they're not expecting it." The bridge fell silent. Boram could feel the disapproval from her alien crew members. They had been trained to fight according to Federation doctrine, which emphasized honor, direct confrontation, and formal battle procedures. Human tactics seemed cowardly and dishonest to them. Ensign Kyung-ho was having similar problems. Aboard the Krillin hive ship Warriors Pride, the massive vessel housed thousands of insect-like warriors who moved and fought as a single unit. Their coordination was perfect, but their tactics were predictable. "Human Kyung-ho," buzzed War Leader Zikth through the translation device. "Your suggestions are unusual. You wish us to break formation and attack in small groups?" "Yes, War Leader," Kyung-ho replied patiently. "The swarm expects large formations. If we attack in smaller units from different directions, we can confuse them and do more damage. But this goes against 3,000 years of Krillin military tradition. We fight as one people, united in purpose and action." Kyung-ho had been working with the Krillins for 2 months and was slowly learning how to communicate with them. "War Leader, unity of purpose doesn't require unity of position. Your warriors can still fight as one people, but from many different places at the same time." It took several more hours of discussion, but eventually Zikth agreed to try the new tactics. The Krillins were curious about human methods even if they found them strange. Dr. Yuna was working in a Federation research facility that looked more like an art gallery than a laboratory. Everything was designed for beauty as well as function, with graceful arches and surfaces that changed color based on the emotional state of the researchers. It was very different from the practical utilitarian labs she was used to on Earth. Dr. Yuna, said her research partner, a floating energy being called an ethereal. The committee has reviewed your latest weapon design proposals. They have concerns about the safety protocols. Yuna looked up from her workbench where she was assembling a prototype weapon that combined human projectile technology with Veltharian energy crystals. What kind of concerns? The weapons you design have no built-in safety restrictions. Federation weapons automatically prevent firing on friendly forces and limit damage to avoid collateral harm. Your designs ignore these protections. Because sometimes you need to ignore them, Yuna explained. What if friendly forces are captured and controlled by the enemy? What if collateral damage is necessary to prevent greater harm? Your safety systems can be turned into weaknesses. The ethereal pulsed with colors that indicated confusion and concern. But without restrictions, how do you prevent accidents or misuse? Training and discipline, Yuna replied. We teach people to use weapons responsibly instead of building responsibility into the weapons themselves. This concept was difficult for Federation species to understand. They preferred technological solutions to behavioral problems, while humans relied more on individual judgment and adaptation. The cultural differences became even more apparent when Commander Seok Jin was assigned to develop new strategic doctrines for the combined Federation human forces. His first proposal shocked the Federation military leadership. You want to deliberately create chaos in our own formations? Asked Admiral Tethys, a Neptune commander whose aquatic physiology required him to attend meetings in a water-filled environment suit. Controlled chaos, Seok Jin clarified. The Void Swarm has learned to predict Federation tactics because they follow established patterns. If we make our own actions unpredictable, the Swarm can't prepare effective counters. But how can military units function without clear, orderly procedures? Seok Jin activated a display showing human military exercises. Individual initiative within overall objectives. Each unit commander makes decisions based on local conditions instead of following predetermined plans. It requires more training and better communication, but it makes forces much more flexible. The Federation commanders watched human soldiers practicing tactics that seemed impossibly chaotic. Units split apart and recombined in new configurations, attacked from unexpected directions, and changed their objectives based on battlefield conditions. Yet somehow they achieved their goals more efficiently than Federation forces using traditional methods. This requires soldiers to think for themselves instead of simply following orders, observed the Krillin representative. Exactly, Seok Jin agreed. Human military doctrine assumes that the soldier on the ground knows more about local conditions than the commander who is far away. We train people to make good decisions, then trust them to do it. The breakthrough came when Admiral J. Young proposed something that no Federation species had ever considered, taking the war directly to the Swarm's home dimension. The suggestion caused an uproar in the Federation Council. Impossible, declared the High Sage. The dimensional barriers protecting swarm space are impenetrable. No Federation ship has ever successfully breached them. Because Federation ships try to push through the barriers using brute force, J. Young explained. What if we found a different way? She showed them intelligence gathered by human reconnaissance teams who had been studying swarm dimensional technology. The barriers aren't walls, they're filters. They're designed to keep out ships and weapons that match Federation energy signatures. But human technology doesn't match those signatures. You're suggesting that human ships could pass through where Federation vessels cannot? Not just human ships, J. Young continued. Hybrid vessels using human-designed engines and Federation-built hulls. Ships that the dimensional barriers don't recognize as threats. The plan was audacious beyond anything the Federation had ever attempted. Instead of waiting for the swarm to attack, they would invade swarm space and strike at the source of the threat. It violated every principle of defensive warfare that the Federation had followed for millennia. But the swarm was adapting to human tactics faster than expected. Recent battles had shown that the enemy was learning to counter human unpredictability and aggression. Something dramatic was needed to break the stalemate. The preparation for the dimensional assault took months. Human engineers worked with Federation scientists, to create hybrid technologies that combine the best features of both approaches. Weapons that could adapt to changing conditions, shields that used multiple types of energy, and ships that could reconfigure themselves during combat. Training was even more challenging. Federation crews had to learn to make split-second decisions without consulting command hierarchies. Human officers had to understand alien psychology and work with species that thought in completely different ways. Captain Boram found herself teaching Veltharian pilots how to fly aggressively, something that went against their peaceful nature. You don't have to enjoy combat, she told them, but you have to be willing to fight hard when it's necessary. Ensign Kyung-ho worked with Krillin warriors to develop small unit tactics that maintained their unity while allowing for individual initiative. Think of it as being many parts of one larger organism, he explained, but parts that can move independently when needed. Dr. Yunna's hybrid weapons proved their worth in test battles, combining Federation elegance with human pragmatism. Her designs could function even when their advanced systems failed, reverting to simple kinetic weapons that required no power source or complex technology. As the preparations neared completion, Admiral J. Young addressed the combined fleet from the command ship, New Harmony, itself a hybrid of human and Federation design. The vessel looked like a work of art, but underneath the beautiful exterior was armor and weapons designed for war. We're about to attempt something that has never been done before, she announced to the thousands of crew members from multiple species. We're going to take this war to the enemy's home and end it once and for all. In the audience, both human and alien faces showed determination mixed with fear. They all knew that this mission would either end the 300-year war or result in the destruction of the largest fleet ever assembled. But for the first time since the war began, the Federation had something they had never possessed before, an enemy that didn't know what to expect from them. Human unpredictability had given them the greatest weapon of all, the element of surprise. The invasion fleet began moving toward the dimensional barriers that protected swarm space. Behind them, they left a galaxy that had been forever changed by the Alliance. General Inho stood in the command center of the massive battle station Unity's Edge and watched as 17 different fleets prepared for the largest military operation in galactic history. Each fleet was positioned near a different dimensional rift leading into swarm space. The coordination required was beyond anything that had ever been attempted. All fleets report ready, General, announced Commander Park, his human aide who had been working with Federation communications specialists to manage the complex multi-species operation. Inho nodded and opened a channel to all 17 fleet commanders. This is General Inho to all units. Today we end a war that has lasted 3 centuries. Every species in the galaxy is counting on us. Remember your training, trust your crews, and bring everyone home. The first phase of the assault began with Captain Nara leading her specialized dimensional breach team through the primary rift near the galactic core. Her ship, the Pathfinder, was a hybrid vessel designed specifically for dimensional travel. Its hull was covered with both Federation crystals and human adaptive armor, creating a vessel that could survive in environments that would destroy conventional spacecraft. Dimensional barrier approaching, reported her Veltharian navigator. Energy readings are unlike anything in our databases. Nara studied the swirling wall of darkness ahead of them. It looked like a hole torn in space itself, with edges that moved and shifted in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Take us through slowly. If something goes wrong, we need to be able to pull back. The barrier parted around their ship like water, but not without resistance. Alarms sounded as reality seemed to bend around them. For a moment, Nara felt like she was falling in all directions at once, then suddenly they were through. Swarm space was nothing like the galaxy they knew. Instead of stars and planets, there were massive organic structures floating in a dark void. The structures pulsed with their own light, and Nara realized with horror that they were alive. The entire dimension was one enormous living creature. Send the signal, she ordered. Tell the other fleets that the barrier can be breached, but warn them about what's waiting on the other side. Across the galaxy, 16 other fleets received the message and began their own dimensional crossings. Each rift led to a different part of swarm space, spreading the invasion across multiple fronts simultaneously. Admiral Wan Ho commanded the largest battle fleet, consisting of ships from all 12 Federation species plus human vessels. His target was a massive swarm breeding complex that intelligence, reports suggested was the source of new warrior. Strains, human tactical doctrine, suggest we hit them fast and hard before they can organize a response, he announced to his mixed crew. Federation wisdom says we should establish a beachhead and advance methodically. Today we're going to do both. His plan was typically human in its audacity. The Federation ships would establish defensive positions while human fast attack craft penetrated deep into swarm territory to strike at critical targets. It required perfect timing and coordination between species that had never worked together in combat before. Dr. Chang Min was aboard one of the research vessels, studying swarm biology in real time as the battle developed. What he discovered changed everything they thought they knew about the enemy. General Inho, he reported over the communication system, the swarm isn't evil. It's not even really aggressive. It's the immune response. Explain, Inho replied while coordinating the movements of multiple fleets. This entire dimension is dying, Chang Min continued. The swarm creatures are trying to save it by gathering energy and resources from other dimensions. They're not invading our galaxy, they're trying to rescue their own universe. The revelation spread through the fleet like wildfire. Suddenly, the 300-year war looked very different. The Federation had been fighting desperate refugees, not malicious invaders. Colonel Dong Wan was leading the ground assault on one of the largest swarm complexes when the new information reached him. His soldiers were advancing through structures that looked like the inside of enormous arteries, fighting creatures that seemed more frightened than aggressive. All units, hold fire unless directly threatened, he ordered. We're going to try something different. Instead of attacking, Dongwan's forces began attempting to communicate with the swarm creatures. It took time and patience, but eventually they made contact with something that seemed to be a swarm leader. The creature was ancient and tired, and through broken communication, it told them the story of its dying universe. The swarm dimension had been consuming itself for millions of years, using up all available energy and matter. The creatures that invaded the galaxy were the last survivors of an entire universe, desperately trying to find resources to keep their reality from collapsing completely. They're not monsters, Dongwan reported to General Inho. They're refugees, and they're dying. The revelation forced a complete change in strategy. Instead of destroying the swarm, the combined fleet began working to save them. Human engineers and Federation scientists collaborated on the largest rescue operation in history. Dr. Yuna found herself working to modify dimensional barrier technology, trying to create stable passages that would allow energy transfer between universes without the need for invasion. Her hybrid technologies proved crucial, combining human adaptability with Federation precision to solve problems that neither species could handle alone. If we can create controlled energy flows, she explained to the joint engineering teams, the swarm dimension can draw power from our universe without taking it by force. It's like giving them a permanent supply line instead of forcing them to raid for resources. The solution required unprecedented cooperation. Every species in the Federation contributed something essential. Veltharian crystals provided energy focusing. Krillin coordination networks managed the complex calculations. Neptune fluid dynamics controlled the flow rates. And human engineering made the whole system adaptable and robust. Captain Yanju found herself in command of the most important diplomatic mission in galactic history. She was leading negotiations with swarm leaders to establish the terms of the energy sharing agreement. The conversations took place in environments that constantly shifted between dimensions, requiring her to adapt to conditions that changed from moment to moment. "What do you need from us?" she asked the ancient swarm entity that seemed to speak for its entire species. "Time," came the response, communicated through patterns of light and vibration that barely translated into language. "Our universe dies slowly. We need time to find new ways to exist. And what can you offer in return?" "Knowledge. We have seen the death of realities. We can teach you how to prevent the same fate for your universe." The negotiations continued for days while engineering teams worked to establish the energy transfer systems. The swarm gradually withdrew their invasion forces as the new systems came online, providing them with the resources they needed without requiring them to consume entire star systems. The war officially ended, not with a final battle, but with a ceremony attended by representatives from every known species. The event took place in neutral space, aboard a massive station constructed specifically for the occasion using technology from all participating civilizations. General Inho addressed the assembled delegates, reflecting on how much everything had changed. A year ago, we were 12 separate species fighting a war we didn't understand, against an enemy we had never tried to communicate with. Today, we are partners in the largest rescue operation in galactic history. The Federation itself underwent fundamental changes as a result of the war. The rigid hierarchy and formal procedures that had governed galactic civilization for millennia gave way to more flexible, adaptive structures inspired by human organizational methods. Captain Yeonju was elected as the first human member of the Federation High Council, representing not just humanity, but all species who believed in the new cooperative approach to galactic governance. Her election was unanimous, supported by aliens who had once dismissed humans as primitive barbarians. In her acceptance speech, she spoke about the lessons the galaxy had learned. We discovered that our greatest enemy was not the Void Swarm, but our own inability to understand each other. When we learned to combine our strengths instead of competing with them, we found solutions that none of us could have discovered alone. The changes went far beyond politics and military strategy. On worlds throughout the galaxy, human children played alongside young aliens, developing hybrid approaches to problem solving that incorporated the best aspects of multiple species' thinking patterns. On Earth, alien exchange students learned human concepts of individual initiative and adaptive thinking. On Veltharian crystal worlds, human artists worked with alien light sculptors to create new forms of beauty. On Krillin Hive worlds, human military advisors helped develop more flexible unit structures that maintained collective strength while allowing for individual creativity. The swarm survivors established colonies in specially constructed pocket dimensions, using the energy provided by the galaxy to rebuild their civilization in sustainable ways. Some of their number became ambassadors to the Federation, sharing their knowledge of dimensional physics and universal ecology. Dr. Chung Min established the first